So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the business of track and field. Tonight we are doing Veterans Day, where we have four very awesome veterans of the sport participating, sharing their knowledge, their insights, and everything they would want to do, everything they want you to know about the sport of track and field. And it's not just about competition, this is about the things that happen off the field. So tonight we have Gail Devers, Adam Nelson, Khadevis Robinson, and Stacy Dragila. All, I don't know, I should have counted how many medals you guys have collectively, but I'm bad just to sum it up. Like 100 Olympics between four people. Yeah, they're awesome. So tonight what we're going to do is do kind of a round robin sort of deal where each veteran is going to speak for a few minutes, and then we'll open it up to question and answers for you guys to say whatever it is that you feel you want to talk about. Does that sound good? I'm just going to go with yes since everyone's on mute. We'll start with Adam, and then we'll go to Gail. We'll do boy, girl, boy, girl. Katie's not in his chair right now.
And the grip? Okay.
And Adam, you have the floor for 7 whole minutes.
7 minutes. I'm going to put my timer on just for you, Lauren. So
one thing, guys, if you have questions like while Adam is talking, feel free to post them in the chat, and he can either look at them or I can look at them and throw them in. But for the most part, we'll wait till like all four people go, and then you guys can take off your mics and unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay.
So I was unlike some of the athletes that are on the call, I'm sure, or maybe like many of you, I didn't have the opportunity to have a sponsorship right out of college, and things have changed a lot since 1997 with the opportunities to gain funding from other sources other than USA Track and Field or whatever you could scrounge up between friends and family. So I actually had to work and train, and that was, I won't touch on that part, but it more than just saying that was a real challenge to balance the two. Ended up getting a job that started at 6 o'clock in the morning and would usually finish up work about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then start my training after that. Made my first Olympic team in 2000 and all of a sudden was really thrust into the professional side of the sport. I was already ranked in the top 10 at that point, or top 12, but even before that, but because our event is so deep, I just hadn't made any teams yet, but won the Olympic trials in 2000 and started talking to agents and really had no clue what I was doing. And I was looking short term at the time because I just figured I'd go for one Olympic Games and then retire or step away from the sport, having fulfilled whatever my dream was at the time, and go back to the real world, so to speak. And when I did that, I really didn't do the right research into agents and to contracts and to understanding the profession. And at the time, there wasn't a great opportunity to really connect with alumni. Athletes really kind of kept a lot more quiet about their contracts and how they deal with the professional side because the professional side was still relatively new. So I ended up signing a contract with an agent who then signed a deal with my first sponsor company. And I didn't realize how bad that deal was because I was looking short term. The deal really didn't have a lot of the incentives that you see today, things like rollover bonuses and as many time or distance bonuses in my case, but distance bonuses and competition bonuses at major meets. And so that set the stage for a lot of instability, relatively speaking, given the fact that I did win a silver medal in 2000, a silver medal in the 2001 World Championships, 2003 World Championships, and then at the time in 2004, which was upgraded to gold in 2012. But despite the fact that I won 5 medals, actually an indoor championship as well, but I've won 5 medals in 4 years, I still only had a base salary of $15,000. That was a really tough pill to swallow. And coming out of that, I really didn't do myself any favors from a professional standpoint to maximize my earnings. I think one thing that athletes in Olympic sports really need to get over very quickly is there's nothing amateur about this sport. You are a professional from the moment that you leave college, and you are a professional who is trying to maximize your potential value every single time you step on the track. And if you keep that at the top of your head, top of mind, and then you say, okay, I own everything about myself until I start assigning or giving those rights away to someone else. Understand what the market value is for yourself, which is different from what the value is, how you may value yourself too. Make sure you're aligned there. I think you can actually set yourself up for long-term success. I went the best part of my most productive years from 2004 through 2007 and 9 in large part without a sponsor. And that's just because I kind of fell through the cracks on some things. Timing is also very important. But I'm at 4 minutes and 20 seconds right now, Lauren, and I'm actually going to cut myself short here because I want to open up the time for questions. I'm going to close with one thing, and that John Capriotti, who is everybody knows him probably from his position at Nike, came to an annual meeting about 8 years ago, and he said something to us at that time that I thought was one of the most prophetic and deep and profound and relevant statements that you need to hear as a young athlete, as an old athlete. The less your event looks like the 100, the mile, or the marathon, the less value you hold to sponsor companies in the sport. That's not to say you can't get paid. He went on to say is that if you're not in the 100, the mile, the marathon, you need to find a way to make yourself more relevant. You have more tools at your disposal now to do so. Take advantage of all of them, including this little thing called social media. It's not a fad. So I would just say that, and I'm going to close and pass on to whoever.
All right. Gail's going to be up next, but I want to check that Stacy is working. Stacy, can you hear us? Or I guess, can we hear you is the question. I don't know what. Stace? Nope.
Nope, I can hear you. Are you there? Sorry. I
Yes,
put you on mute for a second.
it.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Okay.
I'm here. Sorry.
All right. We're going to let Gail go first, and then you'll be fourth, actually, still. So.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. I just put you on mute because I'm still coaching. I apologize.
No, yeah.
So I'm just listening to you guys. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Gail, it is all you. Which, I think you're the 310 number.
I won't take 7 minutes.
Oh, there we go. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I won't take 7 minutes either. But my thing is thinking about life after track. But life after track begins while you're running now. So it is, you're thinking about what you want to do, where you want your life to be. It's not just, I want a sponsorship from, an apparel company or whatever. You are a brand. You are a brand, and so it's how you present yourself that makes the difference, like Adam says. Yeah, from what Cap said, the 100, those premier events, I was fortunate to be in one of those premier events. But it's also still what you do with it. Consider yourself a brand, how you want to present yourself and market yourself. Like Adam was saying too with social media. Social media is big these days, and there's opportunities that we didn't have when we were running, which is, as my daughters tell me, back in the day. So now it's how you do that. It's not just a paycheck that you're trying to get. Yeah, you got to pay your bills or whatever, but what do you want to do after that? And what is it about you? What attributes do you have about yourself that can be marketable? That sometimes you have to bring that to the forefront, especially if you're not in one of the marquee events. So it's really just thinking about it as a business. This is your life. This is your 9 to 5. And, life after track and field, what's going to happen for you? Where do you see your life in 10 years from now? Or, you can't run forever. What do you want to do when that time is over? But you need to start preparing for that now, as far as branding yourself from any and everything. So it's just, when I look, I was fortunate. I was with Nike, and I was with Nike my whole career. Being in one of the marquee events, yes, as long as you do what you're supposed to do, things work out well. But, there's always that possibility that you can get out there, you can injure yourself, or something could happen. And where are you going to be after that? So it's about, and I commend you, Lauren, for what you're doing now, because you're people talk about things like, well, what are we going to do for this next generation? You're not just talking about, you're being about it. And trying to, I think this is going to work a little better once you guys are able to ask us questions of what it is you want to know. All we can tell you is get the most out of it for as long as you can, but it has to be fun. But then there is life afterwards. So you just really have to start thinking about what it is you want to do and start doing that now. I mean, I'm fortunate that every day, if I want to volunteer at my kid's school, that's what I get to do, because it was what I did during that time that I was competing. As far as, you have to save your money. You've got to, even picking the right person, the right shoe company. Are they going to market you? Or are they going to sit you on the shelf? Picking the right agent, knowing, and there are veterans out there that you can ask questions, or people who have been with that agent before agent. So finding out exactly what it is and how it works for you, making sure you get your money, making sure that you're putting something away for a rainy day, that you're investing in the right kind of things that you're going to invest in, so that you will have something when the day comes that you decide that nobody pushes you out of the sport, but you decide to hang up your spike. So basically that's it. I'm waiting for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gail. Khadevis, you want to go next? Do I need to give you the warning like Adam? I know you're like
yeah, I might need it.
Very good motivational speaker, and it's like going to church when Khadevis speaks. I love it. But 7 minutes, Khadevis.
All right, 7 minutes. I got the clock going. The thing is, I want to kind of piggyback on what the two speakers before me said, and you have to treat it like a business. I mean, if you treat it like a business, it'll treat you like a business. But if you treat it like a hobby, it'll treat you like a hobby. So I always say that if you're an entrepreneur, you have to approach it like a business, and you get paid like a business. If you approach it like a hobby, you get paid like a hobby also. So I think the one thing that's super important is that you are a brand. You have to look at yourself like a brand. And the way you do that, everything counts. Not only how you perform on the track or in the ring or whatever your event is, but also how you interact with agents, how you interact with the sponsors, how you interact with everyone around you, because networking is a big part of not only every business, but also track and field. And I always say every zero knows a hero and every dud knows a stud. So, you never know who's going to be that person that's going to be able to help you out. To give you an example, there's individuals that's reps for Nike and Adidas, but they also went to universities. And I happen to be a university coach, and one of the reps actually went to the university that I went to. So you got to understand that, they do ask around. Coaches and other employees and employers ask around to see what kind of professional you were. I also like to speak on some about the agents that I think is important. I think we all, as a professional athlete, we all have different types of goals. Everyone wants to make money, but you have to understand, how do you want to approach that? To give you an example, I'll say this. Some agents are going to put you in meets so you can make a lot of money. That might mean that you're competing every week in all the meets. Me, myself, personally, that's not what I really wanted to do. I got married pretty early, and I have kids, so there's certain things I didn't want to miss. So I needed to be with an agent that if they said, well, Katie, you're going to get this much of an appearance fee, this meet, you can get in this meet, and I could say, well, you know what, that's not going to fit well with my schedule. There wouldn't be an issue. There wouldn't be any problems. I know there's some agents that might be like, man, we already got you in. We're not going to be able to get you in other meets. And then it become kind of an issue. I didn't want that. So I know for me personally, I know maybe I didn't have the biggest name agent, but it worked for me because I had desires, I had goals outside of track and field. Also, I went back to get my master's degree, and I had to put other things on the back burner. And I think you have to learn how to speak up for yourself, because here's the reality. Here's the one thing you have to understand. When JFK got assassinated, 15 minutes later, they had another president. They sworn another president. My point is, they're not going to wait on you. So you might be the hot commodity now, but once you're gone, whomever's running fast or jumping high or whatever is going to be the next person up. So you are a brand. You have to look out for you, and you have to be professional. I mean, it's that's super important. I wrote down some notes. I looked at it for life after track. I started planning on it earlier. And the reason I did that was because, let's say you're fortunate enough to make, let's say, $60,000 a year running track. Of course, there's people making much more, and there's some who's making less. But just let me use $60,000 as a reference point. Well, you start running when you graduate from college. You're making 60,000. Let's say after a couple of teams or whatever, you're making 80, maybe 100,000. And then, you know, after you've been dating the same girl or guy, and then after 4 years, you get married, and you have a kid. So you're living off about $100,000. Well, once you retire from track and field, you have no work experience, right? You've been running track the whole time, and your lifestyle's up at $100,000. Well, the truth of the matter is there's no entry-level jobs for anyone who has no work experience making $100,000. So now you got to go back to whatever that level would be, $45,000, $50,000. There's a $50,000 gap, and here you are much older. Now, this is not like you're coming out of college at 24, 25 making $45,000, $50,000. You know, in some instances, you can be 31, 32, 33 making that amount. So what I did, and I think if you listen to like Lauren and Adam and Gail, we started planting seeds kind of early, you know. That's super important to network and ask some of the older veterans, you know, what they're involved in. Do not be afraid to take risks, because what I found is that the same things that you do to be pretty good in track and field, it applies to other aspects of life and business too. You got to dedicate yourself. You got to make sacrifices. You got to work hard, all those types of things. And I think the thing that's happening now is when we come out, we're all superstars. I tell my college athletes, I ask them, I say, how many of you guys were, you know, the city champion or the district champion or the regional champion or the state champion? Everybody raises their hand. You know, everybody raises their hand, you know. So my point is, when you become a pro, everybody's going to raise their hand. Everybody was pretty good in college, or they wouldn't be professional. So what I mean by that is we all come out thinking we the, for lack of a better term, hot shit, right? But we have to understand, yeah, we might be there for now, but we got to look further down the line. And the way track and field is made up is like you're one team away, one Olympic team, one Olympic cycle away from being out of the sport. We don't want to realize that. And fortunate for myself and Adam and Lauren and Gail, we maybe we figured some stuff out. We made a lot of mistakes, and we was able to rebound from it. But what I'm saying is you got to be really conscious of all those decisions you make and network and ask questions, because we are here to help you guys. That's it.
Great job, Katie. I think one of the important things you touched on was this idea. So the way I like to say it is my net worth and my self-worth are not related. And so what do you actually value at the end of the day? What are your values is what you should be building your career on, not so much like the shoe contract or what the next paycheck is. When you sit down and you say, what do I value first, then you can put those other things in priority order underneath you next. And you can run a lot more carefree as opposed to thinking of this next raise equals this many dollars. And without further ado, last but not least, before we open it up for question and answers, Stacy, are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Hi. You guys said it all. What do I have to say? Can you hear me? Are you guys there? Shoot. Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, good. No, thanks for having me, Lauren. Gosh, you guys pretty much covered everything. I don't know where I need to.
You've got plenty of things, Stacy. You're a pole vaulter. You have a different perspective. You can speak to what it's like for the life of a pole vaulter, what the earnings are like, what kind of good agents there are. You've got all sorts of things to tell us.
Okay. Well, when I started my career, obviously the women's pole vault was in its infancy. I was kind of that first round of gals coming through, and really those first couple times that I went to Europe, honestly, the agents didn't want us there. They thought that we were kind of a novelty, that we were taken away from the other events because we were running around in skimpy uniforms, and our uniforms weren't anything different than the sprinters, you know, the track runners, anybody. And so I remember waiting to get my money at different functions, and these guys just kind of laughing at us. And I thought, man, who are you? And every time we went out, you know, the women kept getting better. There was records set, whether it was European or American, world records. And actually, the meet directors were wanting us because, quite frankly, the men's pole vault was dying. And they weren't, you know, Sergei Bubka was the only guy out there, and everybody else was second fiddle, basically. And they needed something to fill the field. And the women were
very young and the heights weren't very high yet, but every time we went out there, we were performing and we were doing our best and we were being professional about it. And so, you know, it was kind of the agents against the meet promoters at times. And I remember Mark Wetmore pulled me aside once and he goes, you know, thanks for coming to my meet, because if it wasn't for you, the stands over here would not have been filled. People wanted to come and watch the women's pole vault because they had never seen a world record or American record be attempted. And we appreciate you being here. And, you know, things like that, having these personal relationships with people that care about the sport meant a lot to me. And I wanted to perform every time at my very best, not only for myself, but for our sport, to help grow our sport. And so that's kind of how I started, you know, competing. And I, you know, how like Khadevis kind of said, you know, you have to stay true to yourself. And for me, it's about building relationships and also knowing that there is life after track and to prepare yourself for that. And there was earnings early on that weren't very, you know, that weren't going to, you know, pay the bills. And I thought, how am I going to do this? But through grants and through the USA Track and Field Foundation, there were things that I applied for as well. And then as I became better in my sport and wanted in the sport, obviously the money was more readily available, and I became more successful and won major championships, which paid my up my contract with Reebok at first, who I was with, and then after 2000, I was up for negotiation. My contract with Reebok was up, and we were seriously thinking about re-signing with Reebok because I didn't want to be jumping ship, and I wanted to be loyal. But then Nike came calling, and they said that they could pay it about the same, but their price or their bonus structure was going to be more. And you know, my agent was very creative on how to, you know, put every carrot out there that I could potentially, you know, win. And luckily that year and the following year, I pretty much won everything, and that helped obviously put money in the bank for me. But it wasn't, you know, for me, it wasn't about the money or striving for that pot of gold every time. It was me just loving what I was doing. I enjoyed training every day. I loved working hard. I loved competing. I didn't steer away from my competitors. I thought they brought the best out in me. And I think a lot of the young vaulters in our sport, they think that they're owed something right now when they haven't proven themselves. And that kind of, it just doesn't sit well with me. You have to work really hard for what you want. I think there's value in having fun at what you do, but you have to work. And I just think that there's not enough people out there that are willing to work for it. And they think that they should have a contract signed, ready, right out of college. And I just don't think that that's right. There's a lot of women in Europe that are jumping very well. There's a lot of gals jumping in the U.S. very well. And there's that second tier of people that are kind of just maybe not taking it as professional as they should. And you kind of have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what do you want more right now? Do I want a nice car, nice clothes in the closet, or do I want to see what I can do on this professional, you know, sports circuit as a vaulter? And so for me, it was easy for me to choose that route. I lived in a small town where the cost of living wasn't super expensive, and I was happy there, and I was able to be very successful for a long period of time. And now I give back. I coach, I run camps and clinics, and I try to teach that next generation on how to be professional in the sport and how to work hard. And so I think I'll kind of stay with that.
Sounds good. Thank you, Stacy. All right, at this time, you're welcome to take yourself off mute, and the floor is open for questions. I know there's always like this long drawn out pause, but I'm gonna go out ahead and throw out the first question. Can you one of you guys speak to athletes that you bumped into since you've ended your career that didn't plan, and what that kind of looks like? And even if you didn't have a plan, you know, it took you a while, and the feelings that you felt right when you finished your sport, you finished competing, and how long did it kind of take you to say like, "Ooh, I'm done with sport and I'm really on to this next thing," and realize like you're not an athlete anymore?
Okay, I'll talk. Now, for me, you have to understand, I was considered the grandmothers of the sport because I just kind of never officially retired. They just kept inducting me into Hall of Fame, so I think they were trying to push me out. But, I didn't start running until I was in high school. So I was my 10th grade, and that's when I started. And my last race, I was 41. And it wasn't a hard transition for me because I was already planning what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go in different businesses. And then with my husband and I, we kind of just, to be honest, and I'm really going to be honest here, we were transitioning long before my last Olympic Games. So when it came time to, okay, I want to start a family, I want to do this, and I don't want to be held to the constraints of my contract, I actually gave my contract back because I had things in place that I could move on to. So for me, I enjoyed what I did in track and field. I stayed in it as long as I did because I enjoyed it. But I guess I've always been a very, my husband calls me list because I always have a list of things that I'm doing and I got to check it off and do it this way. And that's how I was in my career, that, okay, I've done this, I've got this in place, and now I'm moving on to this next arena in my life and I'm going to enjoy it just as well. And for me, I can say I don't miss track and field because I've moved on to other things and I'm able to, give back to help that next generation. And now I've become a fan of my sport. So it wasn't a hard thing for me to do.
Kara, I see you cut your camera on. Do you got a question?
I was just preparing for a question later, but if we want to keep talking about this one, that's fine too.
Whatever question you want, go for it.
Well, I guess I was trying to figure out how to phrase it too. And it's mostly for Adam because I know, about kind of all of your careers. I feel like I'm the oldest person that's probably listening in to learn from the veterans who I've been on teams with, but I've been with the same company my whole professional career. And as of now, that's changing, which has been really difficult for me, but the opportunities aren't maybe as plentiful as I thought they would be. And I've been kind of going through a period of like, why am I doing this? And is it for some company or is it totally for me? And it's been really nice actually to have this new focus. But I guess my biggest struggle is how long do I let that go for? Like, what kind of is your advice on, like, were those great years from 2004 to 2009, even though they weren't necessarily financially lucrative? Like, were you happy to do that for yourself? Did it make you frustrated with the sport by the end of your career? How long should I hold out for something really good? Yeah.
All right, so that's an interesting question. I'll try to be brief on this. So after 2004, the way 2004 went down, I'd lost in the tie-breaking rule at the time and got second place. It was my 5th silver medal in major championships. And while I've got a different perspective on it now than I did at the time, but at the time I've kind of felt like my sponsor at the time dropped me and said in those uncertain terms that I was only good enough for second. And that was a really hard thing for me to swallow at the time. And I'm going to be very honest about this. In 2005, I trained out of spite. I trained out of anger. I didn't really love the sport anymore. I was doing it to prove people that I didn't need them. And I woke up every day and I literally said, pardon my language, but I said, fuck this company. And I said, fuck the sport, fuck everybody. Fuck was a common word for me at the time. And I don't like to cuss very much. And over time, that anger shifted. I'm not an angry person by nature. I know, like, I compete and I'm very emotional and stuff, but I love to do what I did. I love to compete. I love to entertain. And sometime between my first Olympic Games and the second Olympic Games, the whole motivation for me shifted from what first drew me into the sport, which was not money. It was the personal challenge. And that was my personal motivator. Money has never been a huge motivator for me. It's a motivator, but not a big one. And as I started looking at this more as a profession, I started looking at people in other events and getting very frustrated with the fact that I wasn't valued the same way they were when I felt like I was outperforming them on a regular basis. I felt like I was entertaining a lot of people at events and adding a lot of value. And in 2004, in no uncertain terms, the outside factors, the market factors that govern or dictate our worth in the sport said, slow your roll, buddy. You ain't worth that much. And that was really hard for me to swallow. But the net effect was over 2005, training angry every single day, that's not a sustainable emotion for me. And so I really got back into this, like, why do I really want to do this? And it's because I really do love the aspect of training. I love the grind. I love the people. I refer to track as my family. And KD and I have known each other for a long time. I remember Lauren, the first time I met Lauren was in Monaco, and she told me her name was like Shinkwika Bukuku or something like that. And yeah, she's laughing about it. And then she goes, the crazy thing is, I remember this. She goes, the crazy thing is you thought that was my name. I'm like, I didn't know it wasn't. But anyway, this is my family. And I realize that I love it so much. And that's been the hardest thing for me to let go of. I say this, and so I'm probably the wrong person for you to ask this question, Kara. If you're asking for someone to say, when's it time to give up? I came back as a 41-year-old to throw at the trials last year. I love this sport, and it's defined who I am. It's also taken a lot of opportunities away from me. And I'm going to say this. I went to a great undergraduate program. I went to Dartmouth. The traditional path for people coming out of that college is to go be a banker on Wall Street or do something that you get paid a ton of money, and your life is all about how much money you make or don't make. Then I went to business school. I started planning for my retirement from sport, my post-athletic transition in 2007. Went to the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, which is top 10 business school, top 7, whatever. On the back end, I was supposed to go get one of those fancy jobs again. Yet I found myself repeating the same decision over and over again. I wanted to throw. So I can tell you that my post-athletic transition has not been what I thought it was going to be. It's taken me 5 years to really figure out who I am without sports. And I thought I was doing everything I could to plan beforehand. And Khadevis, you made a point that I wanted to touch on as well, and said, your net income, your income in sport is not going to be your income out of sport. I have an undergraduate degree from an Ivy League school, a graduate degree from a top MBA program, and I can tell you the decision to continue training after graduating from my MBA program impacted my market value. I was not worth as much. And I'm telling you, when I say I made more money in my second job out of college in 1998 than my first job after graduating or after finishing, retiring from sport. And that was a really hard pill to swallow too. But the same things that make you great, the same characteristics that make you great as an athlete can help make you great or help that transition to greatness outside of that. It's a grind to get there. It's always a grind. So, Kara, to answer your question specifically, I don't think anybody can tell you when it's time to give up. If you want it, if you really want it, there's no reason to give up unless there's some external force. For me, I gave up. I retired because I finally couldn't risk my family's financial stability for a dream that I felt was unfulfilled.
Thank you. And I guess I wasn't totally clear. I was talking about giving up the holding out for the contract because I'm committed to Tokyo. I'm really excited for the next 4 years.
Okay.
But, it's just I've been trying to look at it as an opportunity to maybe seek out other partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
And just be
Do you
like,
have a contract on the table right now?
Just bonuses, and I know that that's not, necessarily, like Lauren said, my self-worth. Mm-hmm. It might be my market value, but I want to put myself out there and be more creative than I have been in the past, and it's just hard to decide how to do that, and when trying to do that is too difficult, and maybe just go with the base contract.
So one thing I might just say is if you're getting a base contract, I would really push your agent on limiting some of the restrictions that are normally tied to a contract. I had a great conversation with a guy named Peter Carlisle recently, who's head of Octagon's individual sports. And he said something that I thought was very obvious, but we in track and field don't always think of it this way. You own everything until you give it away. Read the contract and understand exactly what you're giving away, and understand that if you're giving away something that you think you can make a little bit of money off of somewhere else, you should cut that clause out, cut that stipulation out. The shoe companies don't like to use someone else's contract, but just because they have a standard contract doesn't mean you can't go back and say, hey, let me X this clause out. Mr. Winger.
That was perfect segue to Jay's question. His question says, to everyone, knowing what you know now, what are some key things you would absolutely make sure are in your contract if you had to do it all over again? I'm going to start with this one because we just left the education. And Adam was talking about having gotten a Dartmouth degree, going to graduate school, etc. So one thing I'd like you guys to speak to is the idea of, are you able to train and go to school? You left college, you trained and you went to school, but frequently athletes go pro and they feel like they have to train full time. They can't also go to school. So what value is there in continuing to go to school, but also answer Jay's question in what you wish was in your contract? And so I said, I mixed those two together because the thing I would say put in your contract that athletes are missing out on is that they'll pay for your education. If you're in a position that you can go pro without having finished your college eligibility, they will pay for the remainder of your education if they value and they're trying to will you out of school. So if that's one of the things that's on your plate and that's a thing that's, an option for you, make sure that you have someone who knows that that is an option that should be on the table. I left school early and I made sure that that was the thing that was on the table. Like, there's no way that I'm getting ready to pay the $45,000 that it costs to go to University of Miami. Imagine how that would impact your earnings if you had to pay for that after having been on a full scholarship. So don't let that one thing be left behind when that is an option that's on the table. Rest of you? Gail, what's something you would put in your contract?
I think for me, again, it goes back into what your overall goal is. And for me, I was one that I liked to have a stable income, meaning so far as contracts are concerned, I didn't want to have any reductions. So I was willing to take a lower contract and not have any reductions than a higher one and I can have a reduction. So to me, that was my own personal one. A lot of people don't go that route, but I just knew I could live below my means. So I knew if my contract was a certain amount, at the very least, I could pay my bills and stuff, especially when you have a wife and kids and stuff like that. So it was important for me to not have those reduction clause in my contract. And then secondly, like what Lauren just said, if you guys notice, Adam, Lauren, myself, we all went back to school to get our master's degree or some other postgraduate degree in some way, shape, or form. We kept getting education and kept, doing things to better ourselves. And that's the thing I think you have to understand is that just because you're now a professional athlete, it doesn't mean that you're not going to continue. You shouldn't continue to, keep bettering yourself, because you have to understand that, again, where you're at now and what you're doing now is probably not going to be the same later. Give you an example. Lawrence spoke about getting her degree in $45,000. I don't know how much it is now, but the University of Miami might be more than $45,000. You get my point? So everything's getting more expensive. Everything's costing more. So even if you're doing well, 5 years down the line when you decide to retire, you think about going to graduate school, it's that much more. And when you go to graduate school, you got to pay for it yourself. So again, when you start to get your contract and you talk to your agents, and like Adam said about you own everything and know what's in your contract, that's super important. Now, me, I was fortunate enough to, after a while, have a agent that was very proactive with me. I wanted to know what my appearance fees were. I wanted to know what I was going to be getting paid. So this is a little trick I did. I mean, I would just confirm everything through an email. You always, what I call CYA, whatever job you get on, CYA, get it in writing. Because word of mouth is not always good when you're saying somebody promised you something. So if somebody told me I was supposed to get whatever, $1,000 appearance fee, you know, I would always kind of email and say, am I being clear? You said I'm getting $1,000 appearance fee because I need to budget to pay bills and stuff. And they would say yes. That way, you know, I would always know. And, you know, if it ever came a time in which I'm talking to a meet director, and hey, good job, Khadevis, man. I'm like, hey, man, I'm glad you gave me that $1,000 appearance fee. Sure makes a difference. And he looks at me and say, hey, man, I gave you $5,000. You know, so I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, a lot of people won't like that, but you're a business. You have to understand that you are a business, and business people understand that. They understand, like agents, they're a business, so they're trying to make money. So don't take that part personal, right? So in your contract, treat it as if that's money getting taken away from you. And whatever you need to be successful, you have to be selfish and do that. Because once you're gone, you know, you can't go back, and the world's going to keep going forward. So,
Stacy or Gail, you want to speak to what you would put in your contract?
Well, yeah, my contract. I mean, I guess I look at it like this. I was a business. I'm the business, and this is my business. I'm the brand. So when it came down to whether it be my agent or whatever, in my contract, and I think, like you guys were talking about earlier, let's say these meat promoters or the shoe companies only want to pay you X amount of dollars because this is what they think you're worth. Okay, well, I may think I'm worth more. So I get, in the beginning, what I used to tell them is like, pay me now or pay me later, but you're really going to pay me. So if you only think I'm worth this, let's put that as my base. I want incentives. Because if you don't think I can do it and I believe I'm going to do it, it's almost like make your haters your motivators. That's what I want to do. So there were years where I made more in the beginning in bonuses than I did in my base contract. And then they got wise and said, okay, well, let's do it this way. And so you can do that. As far as like, you know, I know contracts now they try to lock you up from any other products or anything that they might think that you want to get into. That's not in my contract. You have to take that out because I think, Adam, you were talking about that. I own me, and I own everything that I'm going to do. If I look at myself and I say, okay, I have an opportunity to do this, I may not want it with you. I mean, I think we missed the whole ball when, you know, you look at NASCAR. And NASCAR has multiple sponsors. I still think track and field is losing it when we don't allow our athletes to have multiple sponsors, because no one, you know, where do you get sponsorship from? They want to be seen. They want to have their name and their signage in places. And if we're just, you know, back in the day, we had Mercedes-Benz as a sponsor when we went to IAAF meets and stuff like that. But that's all we had. As an athlete, we could only have our logo and it could only be so big. Well, that's why companies didn't want to put money into us, because they're not getting anything from it. If we could have signage, you see, even golf is getting into that. If you can have signage from all of your sponsors somewhere, you know, I don't care if it's on the back, whatever, then they're getting something out of it and they want to put more dollars into you. In your contract, if there's one company and they want to lock you up and then not use you, then that's money that's taken away from you, or opportunity as far as notoriety of something that you could be doing for yourself that could be lucrative for what you want to do later on in life. So in my contract, I was I was hard-nosed when it came to certain things, and I would take it and go back and forth. You know, my agent had it, but I had the contract too, because it's you. Even with mine, my check did not go to my agent. It went to me. My name is on that. And it's not saying I don't trust anybody, but it's me. I took something from Oprah that I met, and I met her a long time ago. You always sign your own checks. You always take your own money. I will sign it over to you, and if I give you something, I'm going to 1099 you too. So it's a business, and you have to learn all of that kind of stuff to make sure it's not that you don't trust anyone, but there has to be a checks and balance. You know, I hear people saying, well, my agent does this because I'm over in Europe. Okay, well, it's very easy with these days with your phone and the different apps that you have, that you can do it yourself. So that's a precaution that I would always, you know, warn people on, is that you need to do that, because then you hear on the news, how somebody had all this money and what happened to them because somebody took it or they didn't pay the bills. And when it comes down to it, it is your name. You may hire a lawyer or a tax person to do yours, but if there's no checks and balance and you don't go back and figure it out, then 10 years down the line is while you're figuring out, or while you're having to figure out, what am I going to do now because I have nothing.
I think you brought up a really good point, Gail. The idea of this entourage, it's a cool thing to have an entourage. Like, you made it when you got people, and my people handle that for me. And, oh, my people, my people, my people. As an athlete, you are the business. It's your job to be educated. You do have people around you that help make your life easier, but you need to educate yourself about the things that are pertinent to this business. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as athletes is, coming into the business, most of the agents, you're 20 years old, fresh out of school, and your agent is a 50-year-old man, or like now they're 60 something because it's the same agents. And you look at them like a father figure. You're scared. You're in a new environment. They're professionals. They're coming looking for you, saying they're going to take care of you, and you're looking to that guy as a father figure. But you forget that is not your parent to tell you what to do. That is someone you hired. You are the client, and you employ them. And that's where it starts from the very beginning, is setting that relationship up with your agent to be able to say, what is this? Well, explain it to me. Well, I don't understand. Well, help me understand a little bit more. Go over it one more time. It's okay to do that because you employ that person. And as it pertains to the other members of your entourage, making sure that what's going on, whether it be your money, like you said, just your accountant, your financial planner, whoever it is that's on your team. They can help you. They can make your life easier and more efficient, but at no time should you be afraid to ask a question. We have one question from Kara about how you value things. And Adam said pretty much go out and throw a number out. Does anybody want to speak to how you value yourself? Stacy, I wanted you to speak too about relationships and governing yourself accordingly. We get on the circuit and there's a lot of hullabaloo going on with being away from home and males and females getting together and hanging out. You were fortunate to find love in the track and field world. So I want you to speak about that, and then also the idea of how to govern yourself in a professional manner, because this is your business.
Well, it was crazy. I was on a trip it was at World Championships in Finland where I met my husband, Ian Waltz, the discus thrower, and I was watching the pole vault meet competition, the men's competition, and then I was going to go out with one of my sponsors, and he said this one bar had a karaoke place, and we ended up at this bar with pretty much all the track athletes that already competed, and just getting a drink at the bar and started chatting with a couple different people, and met Ian and started talking, and just we came from very similar backgrounds, and not really thinking anything at that point of anything. And then I became injured and I needed somewhere to go train and have some good therapy. And so I chose to go down to Olympic Training Center, and that's where Ian was training, and that's where I got to know him obviously a lot more intimately, and we started hanging out more, and one thing led to another, and we got married, and that's been a lot of fun. Obviously, it's fun to share this journey with someone that knows how hard you work, the sacrifices you need to make to train, and to have your rest, and to have your time, and to take care of your body, whether it's going to the chiropractor and physio and everything. There's just a lot of time that you need to have for yourself, and it was really fun to share that with him because he knew what it took to be at the top like that. And I think we've helped each other balance our life too. He's a lot more easygoing than I, believe it or not, and more positive, and I guess I'm a little bit antsy and stuff. So he's helped calm me down and kind of see things differently. But yeah, he continued on and competed through 2012, and I retired in 2009 after my last World Championship team. And I knew that, I was 39 at the time, and I knew that I wanted kids, and the clock was ticking, and I said, we need to have some kids. So we weren't married yet, but we were engaged, and so we have 2 girls now, and it's been awesome. He's a firefighter now here in Boise, and I run camps and do private coaching here in the area, and he helps with some of my admin stuff, but for the most part, he loves his new job, and he likes to see me happy, and he knows that I love giving back to the kids, and he's really supportive about that. So it's a really good balance. He's not so much into the coaching. He's, you know, I've tried to talk him into it, but it's just not really his thing. He knows how hard he worked for it, and when he gets a kid that's not super motivated, it really frustrates him. And I like working with that kid that I need to push, and I like working with that kid that's super, you know, talented. And so I think it's a good mix for those young kids to see that obviously more developed athlete and hope to, you know, spur them along, because I think that's how I developed as an athlete. And I wasn't amazing coming out of high school. I wasn't amazing coming out of college, but I worked my butt off to get where I was, and I was at the right place at the right time, that had really good support staff and a great coach that believed in me. And that's really how my career took off. I would have never stepped in to the pole vaulting had my coach not asked me to try it one day. And I thought, wow, I'm not going to try this. I'm 23 years old. There's no way I'm going to figure this out. And then 5 years later, 5 short years later, I'm standing on the podium with a gold medal around my neck. I thought, how did I ever get here? But it was probably from my background of training for the heptathlon and being raised on a ranch and working hard and knowing dedication and perseverance and things like that that helped me achieve those goals. And it's like Adam said, I love training. I love dangling that carrot out in front of myself. And, you know, every quarter inch was a huge success for me. And, you know, it's fun to get paid, but it wasn't about the money. I didn't need a lot of things to make me happy. And I just needed a great support, a great husband, and I knew we would do fine. And I think that's lessons that need to be learned. It's really nice to have a really fancy car, I'm sure. Sure, it's really nice to have a nice fancy house and probably a house cleaner, but that's just not my style. And I have money in the bank that I know that I'll have there to help support my kids through college if I have to. I've been invested in a commercial property just recently that I would love to turn into a training facility. And so I've made investments a different way, and we live in a nice, modest house, and we're going to be okay, you know, and I'm okay with that. And there's other people that want to live differently, and that's what you have to look at. I think when you're in this sport, you're going to make a lot of money. You have potential to make a lot of money if you do well, and it's, you know, you're going to have to decide how you're going to manage it. And like Lauren said, you have to have good support staff around. You need to know what's going on. You need to be, you know, working with your accountant to set yourself up for the future.
Perfect.
Can I piggyback on something, Lauren?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is kind of like 3 points. One is Kara asked how you sort of value yourself for different events and things like that. And I'm going to be very honest. When I first started asking people to pay me for a speech or for coaching, I was very uncomfortable with it. What I've learned since then is that if you're uncomfortable with asking for a specific amount, then no one is going to pay you for that amount. So for me now, I know what I'm worth when I go to different events, and I scale it depending on what the event is. The follow-up to that is, if you go and you under-deliver, you will never make that amount again, because the word will get out there. So athletes are notorious for going to corporate events and not delivering. So make sure you understand exactly what you're supposed to do and then deliver it. It was very uncomfortable for me the first time a coach or father called me and said, "Hey, can you work with one of my athletes?" I didn't really have the time. I threw a number that I thought was stupid. I said, "Yeah, you can come train with me for a weekend for $1,000." And this was in 2003, the first time I did it. And lo and behold, they said, "Okay, no problem." And they spent 3 days with me. Well, Friday afternoon, Saturday, and then part of Sunday. And I turned that into, I still train a few people every so often for $1,000 a month. Same kind of idea. And if they want me to come up there and train with them on a one-on-one basis and in person, it's $1,000. I could probably charge more for some of them, but I don't care in that aspect. On the other hand, some speaking agreements, you know, big keynotes start off anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 and can go up. But I've also worked on that, and I didn't start off there. It started off at $500. I want to go back to something about contracts. Contracts are very, very important. You want to make sure that you have a contract with your agent Specifically, you want to make sure that contract also has some sort of dispute resolution clause that you fully understand. I can't tell you how many times I've heard athletes who had a falling out with their agent and then all of a sudden had to pay a lot of money to either get out of the contract or they had to keep paying this agent for much longer than they were actually working with them. Now the agent's going to push back on it, but if you don't ask about it, if you don't ask, they're never going to have an opportunity to say no. You're never going to have an opportunity to have a conversation about it. Never hesitate to ask a question because you're afraid that someone's not going to like the question. That probably means you're asking the right question, particularly when it comes to contracts. The contracts that you have aren't just with agents or sponsors. They're also with the federation. And this is a big, big subject because a lot of us as athletes, it's like all of a sudden they wave the national team and the Olympic flag in front of us, and we forget about every other professional obligation that we have. And as a result, we put ourselves in situations that are every so often cause a real conflict of interest with our sponsors and the national team. The most recent examples are the things with the relay teams when they've tried to extend the national team relay races to other events, and it poses problems for the non-national team sponsor athletes. So if you run for Adidas, it can sometimes pose problems as to whether or not you'll actually be allowed to run at a specific event. This all comes down to understanding contracts and understanding what you own and what you've already given away. That's a really important, just a really important thing. What I would also make sure I have in my, going back to, I'm going to change the subject a little bit, to sponsor contracts. There's one word that I wish I'd known back in 2000, roll over. Maybe that's two words. I didn't know what a rollover was. And a rollover, if you don't know what it is, it's basically a performance incentive bonus in 1 year that carries forward to the subsequent years of your contract. So if I win an Olympic Games, the standard rollover bonus was at the time initially was $50,000. Then that $50,000 would roll into my base for the following year and should carry forward for the duration of the contract. I had no rollovers in my first contract. I still had a lot of bonuses in my first contract, but I had no rollovers. There's another thing that's more of a health and safety issue that I'm hearing about a whole lot, and that is frequency of competition reductions. So if you're not competing enough, then or frequently enough, there are some sponsors that will actually implement a reduction. I'm personally against that. And you should really push hard and make sure you read that part to understand exactly what that is, because there are certain things that are, one example would be pregnancy. So if you do get pregnant and you don't compete, that can count against you. You can be reduced. So what I would also, if you're a female and you have any interest in having babies during your active athletic career, which does happen and it should be able to happen, you want to make sure that you have a pregnancy clause in there that says they will utilize your alternative appearances instead of competitions to satisfy that frequency requirement. There's no reason in the world that a female should be punished professionally for having a baby when there are perfectly reasonable alternatives that the sponsor company could utilize you and still benefit from that contract. I mean, there's a whole bunch of athletes' rights issues to me that I think like athletes need to be more aware of. But at the end of the day, if you don't read the contract, you don't know what stupid questions to ask because you'll feel like they're stupid. And a lot of times you'll be told, well, don't worry about that. Your job is to worry about that. So I'll stop there, pass it on.
I know we're a little bit over time. We're actually, we started at 7:08, so we're 1 minute left technically, but we ran over our 7 to 8. So if anybody needs to jump, I completely understand. If anybody has any other questions, I want to just take a brief pause and make sure anybody on the call that has a question gets a chance to ask it. So I'll do that now. Okay, that was 5 1,000s. And I'll just leave with one final question. We're just talking about like life happens. As you guys wrap up, so I want each of you to kind of go around and give your closing remarks sort of deal. And as you wrap up, talk about a little bit, maybe something that happened during your career that you didn't expect. Because, you know, like you were just talking about pregnancy, for example. It's like, of course I'm not going to get pregnant in my career. Of course I can't compete if I'm pregnant. But life happens. You know, you might not have planned to get married. The more frequent thing is injury. Everybody, you know, your life is good when you're healthy, but what happens when you're not? So as you give your closing remark, each one of you kind of talk about one thing as well that, you know, life kind of happened and you need to be prepared for that sort of thing. Katie, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start. About a couple of years after I started running professional, that's when I decided I wanted to go to grad school. And so because of my schedule, because of grad classes, the time of it, it was going to conflict with my training schedule with my coach. And so at the time, I needed to change that, but the system I was in wasn't conducive with me changing the time schedule for me training. So I had to make a decision, which was, do I want to continue to train under this system, or do I go out on my own and go to grad school? And so I made a decision at the time. I said, I just looked at my future and I said, well, I want to go to grad school. And so I essentially left the club what I was with, and the club at the time had my coach and my agent. Everything was wrapped up in one. So here I am in a different state, in a different city, without a coach, without an agent. So at the time I called my sponsor and I was like, well, you know, I'm no longer with the same, you know, club, coach, and agent. So my contract, can you just send it to me? And they said, we're sorry, Khadevis, but your contract's through the club. I was like, huh? And your contract was through the club. So essentially what ended up happening, like Adam and everyone said, you know, I didn't really read my contract good enough to understand that it was tied to kind of the group and the situation I was in. So if I wasn't in that particular group of situation, that means I wouldn't have a contract. So as you can see, it was like, okay, do I stay here with a contract or do I leave and not have one? So I made a decision to go out on my own and say, okay, you know what, let's figure this out. So I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a contract. I didn't have anything. And I was going to grad school. So the point I'm making is, like Adam said, like everybody just said, life happens, you know, and you have to kind of make a decision. So what I needed to do at that point, I had to, you know, like reinvent myself, because now I had to work hard enough and run fast enough to get another contract on my own. And so I ended up doing that and it worked out for me. But I just think that people have to, you have to be willing to take those risks, because even if you're doing well, I had been running well. So it's not like I wasn't running well, but I needed to make a decision on my future, on my life. And at that time, it conflicted with what might have been the best decision for my track life. But I was making a decision on my life and my wife and my kids right now, even though I wasn't married then, I didn't have any kids then, but I'm glad I made that decision. So life happens, just be prepared. And the last thing I want to say is, when I was running, here was my goal. I wanted to have enough money saved up so that when I retired, I could live 1 year without having to work if I didn't want to. Now, that didn't mean I wouldn't. It just meant that I wanted to have that much. Because I said, I've been training and competing all this time. I don't know what I'm going to want to do when I retire. So I wanted to have 1 year of income, so that if I just wanted to find out what I want to do, I want to travel the world, if I want to try these different jobs, I have that amount. So like Stacy said, I didn't need the fancy cars, I didn't need all that stuff, but I did need enough in my bank account so that if I wanted to just for 1 year figure out what I need to do in my life, I could do it. That was the most important thing to me.
Amen to that. Amen. Amen. That was church right there. Gail, would you like to go? Tell us about a time with life in your closing remarks.
Sure. You know, I always consider myself to be a very goal-oriented person, and I set goals for myself, write them down on sticky notes from the very beginning, and I use that as my motivator to, you know, as a constant reminder to me of what it is that I want to accomplish. And so the one thing that happened early in my career that was totally unexpected was my Graves' disease. And, you know, waking up and not knowing what's going on and not being able to run, or even to just function with the headaches and the hair loss, the weight loss. And this went on for 3 years. But in the back of my mind and still on those papers that I saw that were getting dustier and dustier were still my goal. And I didn't let, I didn't let the Graves' disease become a crutch to me, because I was already thinking. I mean, I remember being in the hospital wondering if they would save my feet, because that became, and one of the options that they were thinking about was amputation. And even in that moment, my goal is to go to the Olympic Games, and I'm still going to make this happen. I was trying to figure out how to go to the Paralympics. So, we all have setbacks. We all have things that happen in our life where, my words are, where you feel like the walls are closing in on us and there's no way out. And what is it that you do from that? You have to get up. You have to keep fighting. I think we all have it within us. Like, Kara, you asked a question about, when should you stop trying for this contract versus another? And whether it be a contract, or when should I stop competing, or what event should I do, or how many times should I let my agent tell me that I need to run in these many events and that's not my goal? Where should I go from that? We have it within us to be the champion that we always are. You were born a champion. If you set goals for yourself and you don't let anything deter you or anyone deter you from achieving those goals, no matter how long it may take, you have to find happiness in what you want to do for yourself. No one else can find that or make that happiness for you. So if you set goals for yourself of things that you want to accomplish, and just be determined. Like I said, things may come, trials, tribulations. If you take those as something it's a stepping stone to get you where you want to. If I had my life to live over, I always tell people, look at me like I'm crazy. I say I would ask for my Graves' disease again, because it made me into the person that I am. It tells me that I am not a person that I don't know what the word no means. Well, I take that back. Before I had kids, I didn't know what the word no means. Now I say, no, you can't go here. No, you can't have that. But it's just being determined to do what it is that you want to do in life, where you want to go in life. Make that plan, make that short term, that mid-range, and that long-range goal of where you see yourself. Now, as you're competing, 5 or 10 years, are you still going to be competing? And as you're competing, what else are you going to be doing? And then where do you see yourself in 20 years? And that's what will make, we have no excuse anymore. We can pick up our phone and we can ask our phone if we don't understand a contract or this or that. Just educate yourself on the things that you are into. Don't rely on somebody else to give you the answer that now we can find out for ourselves, and just be vigilant in what you do. Find happiness. And, like I said, I don't miss track and field. I love track and field. I love being a fan of my sport now, but I like that I'm able to move on to that next part of my life, and I did it my way.
Awesome. Thank you, Gail. Is the 707 number Stacy? I don't feel like it was. I think she might have jumped. Not. Okay. Adam, do you want to close us out?
Sure. Look, I think the most important thing is if you're looking to be a professional athlete, you've got to act like a professional, and that just means dotting your I's, crossing your T's, understanding what the contracts are, and also understanding that you have as it's come up several times tonight, that you have a shelf life, and that's really hard for a lot of us to swallow. You will not always be the champion in this field, at least in the field of track, that you are today. When you are transitioning, the same things that made you great as an athlete will make you great afterwards. You have to remember that you've probably spent 15 or 20 years developing your skills, developing your speed. Even if you feel like you were naturally gifted in track, it still took 15 or 20 years to develop at some level. It doesn't necessarily take that long to translate your skills as an athlete into something that is a post-athletic career, but there are a lot of hard times. And just because things are hard doesn't mean they're always going to be that way. I will close with something that I like to say to people, and it's to reference what Pierre de Coubertin says, who's the founder of the modern Olympics. And he says he stressed the importance of the struggle. the struggle that all Olympic athletes face. And that's because it's the only thing that we're guaranteed. In any competition, there's only going to be one winner, but there's going to be lots of victories along the way. And you have to learn how to celebrate those and understand that the losses that you experience are learning points, and they're just part of that struggle. So I'm here. If anybody ever wants to email or contact me, you can at anelson@trackfieldaa.com, and then I'm more than happy to share my cell number. I wish that someone had done this when I was coming out of college, Lauren. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. I did get one question from Robin, which look is the perfect thing for me to close out with. She was on the phone and didn't get to figure out how to get off mute to answer, but she wanted to ask you guys about using a financial advisor and whether or not you realized it was a benefit for you during your career.
As long as it's not this person I hear about, Lauren.
I swear to goodness, that is a real question that came from an athlete. But what I was going to say is, if you guys want to answer, you're welcome to. And if you guys need to jump off, I'm going to continue recording, but don't feel obligated to answer, because the next session is what is a financial advisor / planner / all these different things that they call themselves. And why do I need one? Do I need one? How do I find out if I need one? What questions do I ask one? So we'll cover that in depth on the next session if you guys got to jump and don't want to answer that. Sorry, Robin, I just saw your question right now. If you're the 707 number, that's the line.
I would encourage people to use a financial advisor, or at least an accountant, if they're not comfortable with it. None of it's rocket science, but it does require time and an investment and learning a language that we're not necessarily confronted with on a daily basis. So if you find someone that you trust, there's also a resource which you'll probably talk about is the FINRA certified or FINRA approved financial advisor. It's what all the major players associations demand sort of from any financial advisors that work with their athletes. So but that's all I'll say about that, because she's the pro right there. She's the pro.
Yeah, definitely get one. There was just an article or a thing on TV about a lot of the basketball players or football players who are not coming out early or who deciding to come out early, and they went with a financial advisor, and they tell them about the insurance policies and disability policies and all those types of things. And taxes also. I think if you listen to the old stories, a lot of people got hit with taxes 5 years, 10 years down the line after they retired, and that's because they didn't have a financial advisor. They don't put away money for the taxes. And you got to remember, if you're only running track, you don't have other job, you're kind of not paying this into maybe Social Security and stuff. So it's a lot of stuff that you don't think about right now that you need a financial advisor to kind of brief you on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Yes, you retired twice, Khadevis. You retired once from sports and then retire at whatever old age you desire based on your savings. That is another topic for the next month. I appreciate you guys getting on tonight, and that is all, folks.
Thank you, Lauren. You're awesome.
Thank you, Gail.
No, serious. I'm dead serious. When I came up, I had in my team, I had Florence and Jackie and Valerie. So I had that. And what you're doing for this younger generation is so needed. And so I commend you. I am giving you hats off. If I had a hat on, I'd take it off for you. So thank you.
Thank you for your time, especially at the last minute.